Chewing the Cud, Season 1, Episode 7. It's now 2023, so Happy New Year and welcome. I'm joined again virtually by Neil. So hello, Neil.
Hello, Andrew. Hello, everybody. Good to be back.
Yeah, I hope you've had a good Christmas and a good New Year. And
Absolutely.
Our guest today is Mark Partridge, Technical Director from Duffields in Yeovil. So hello, Mark.
Good morning, Andrew. Thank you
Good
very
morning.
much.
Good morning. Well, it's supposed to be morning. It's afternoon, Mark. You're an hour later than you're supposed to be. It's afternoon. Come on. Anyway, not to worry. Sorry, Mark. So we're here. Mark's agreed to join us today. We thought, given that we've had a couple of topics regarding sustainability in terms of the on-farm recycling and in terms of the nitrogen cracker in the time we've been doing this, we'd have a discussion talking about basically the livestock industry, feed industry is effectively a recycling industry. Would you agree with that?
I'd agree totally with that. Yeah.
Good. So before we do that, Mark, tell us who you are. How you got to where you are, what you do, because obviously you're not just work for Duffields. I know myself, having Rom scored at your place.
Yeah.
So, tell us about how you got to where you are today.
So going right back to the beginning, I'm a dairy farmer's son from Sherborne in Dorset. Went into the ancillary industry, started out as a with BOCM pools at the time.
Blimey. Yeah. Showing your age now, Mark.
Yes. And then started in '92 with Penmill Feeds in Yeovil.
So were you at because that your site where you are, that was a BOCM site, wasn't it, originally?
Originally it was Blandford and Webb.
Blimey, I wouldn't even know that one. So
yes,
okay.
Puritan Mill.
Right, and then it became BOCM.
Yes, briefly.
And you were there when they chose to shut it down, was it?
Yes, they bought the business to shut it down.
Oh, was it?
Yes, and they moved the tonnage into Blandford Mill at that time.
It was literally just to buy the tonnage.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so then
and Blandford and Webb were a merchant business, so the business got split between BOCM on the feed side, and UAM and all the fertilizer sprays and everything like that all got amalgamated. And I'm not quite sure where that all ended up. But
so what did they used to have some kind of store down at the mill where it is now, or they had it elsewhere?
The head office of Blandford and Webb was obviously in Blandford. And they had chemical store for.
The mill was over there, and then so then obviously BOCM decided to shut it down.
Yes.
So what I understand and being told, and you can correct me, sold everything that was inside out of the mill.
Yes.
And then a number of you, I believe, including yourself.
Well, I at that point wasn't financially involved, but the new owners bought all the equipment and reinstalled it.
So I understood, brought it all back and reinstalled everything that had been. How long was it empty for?
A matter of weeks, I think.
Oh, literally. Yeah. So not long. So then you obviously started up with the new business as it was, Penmill.
Yeah.
What was your role with the business then?
Selling and technical.
So always sort of been on the sort of technical side of things. Yeah. And then obviously that business ran for what do you say?
Well, 2004 we were taken over by Duffields.
So nearly 20 years.
Yeah.
Another couple of years, and it will be nearly 20 years, won't it?
Well, it'd be 30 years. That I've been.
I mean since Penn. Yeah. No, because I know. People still call it Penmill, don't they?
Well, we did run as Penmill for probably 10 years.
Yeah.
And then it was decided through marketing and what have you to rebrand as Duffields throughout the group.
What? So you were owned by Duffields for quite a while. It wasn't an immediate.
No.
Okay, which makes sense. Funnily enough, I know up in North Queensland, Malanda Milk, when they got taken over by dairy farmers, they ran as Malanda Milk still for a number of years because it was the local brand before deregulation. And their comment was they wish they'd just gone straight to dairy farmers as soon as they took it over. So before deregulation, everybody knew that it was the local milk.
Yeah.
So you've been there a while. So you're technical director down there these days, keeping busy, and still got a farm at home.
Still got a farm at home, milking. We've got 3 robots, and building up to 180 in milk cows.
It's your son and wife more day to day there, and you just float in and out as required.
As required, yeah.
Wonderful.
So, well, I guess it's a question I asked our last guest, which is the real job?
I think I count it as one job, really.
Yeah.
It's dairying.
Yeah, just different aspects of dairying.
Yes, it's different aspects of dairying. I see it all as one job. I don't really see it as two jobs.
It keeps you grounded on both sides, doesn't it? You know what's going on both sides of the industry. Then makes sense.
I think you probably answered it better, actually, because he got a little bit red and a little bit flustered, didn't he, Neil, when I asked that question on our last podcast?
Yeah.
Oh dear. But anyway,
difficult question, but I agree. It's a bit of both. You keep your hand in at everything. Then it makes sense.
It really keeps it real for me, and and
you've got the same problems as everybody else.
And then as we do get people come in to try to sell us additives and stuff, I can really look at it as how would this benefit me on my farm?
Do you ever do any trials on your own farm off the back of that?
I do try stuff, but I generally pay for it rather than have it as a trial.
Yeah. But I guess you've got that somewhere you can play with it maybe a little bit. But no, that's cool. So we're here today to talk about how the feed industry, it doesn't matter whether it's moist or compound, but today we're obviously talking about compound. It's really a recycling industry.
If I give you a bit of background, the UK, in terms of compound feed production, is somewhere around 17 million tonnes. That's cattle, pig, poultry.
That's everything. Monogastric and ruminant.
Yes.
Yeah.
Of that, about between 5.5 and 6 million tonnes is cattle and calf.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And within that 17,000 tonnes, there's about 8 million tonnes of cereals used, which would be wheat, barley, predominantly, beans, and increasingly maize grain, imported maize grain. Right.
How many mills would there be? Because I mean, I was funny enough only having this discussion with my father the other day, and you talk to older generation as well. They're just not the feed mills available. So how many are there these days?
No, I'm not really sure. Probably 20, maybe more with the integrators on the poultry side.
Whereas it used to be, I mean, you talk to people around here, I remember them, you would as well, Hanfords, Dalgetty, Old Acres, Sheldon Jones.
Yeah.
My father was telling me that those were two companies, and they'd merged when they moved down to Somerset in the early 60s. So it was, and you just talked about Blandford and
Webb.
Webb. Sorry. So there was just so many more, and they're just not there anymore, are they?
Yeah. Sheldon Jones, Lopen.
Oh yeah, Lopen food. Yeah. I remember my father trying the yeast sack in Lopen when it first came out, and he had a book, and probably still got it somewhere. A book they gave him and everything for it.
Nitrovit.
Yeah.
Bibby.
Yes. The industries. I mean, there's less farmers, but I guess it's like everything, and there's just less everything, isn't there? The market, the market contracts, doesn't it? And the suppliers contract.
And of course, there were big changes going back in the 80s, early 80s. It was predominantly grass silage and compound cake was the predominant way of feeding cows.
Yeah.
Obviously, as herds have got bigger, mixer wagons.
Yeah.
Most people were doing self-feed silage and on a face.
Yeah.
And compounds in the parlour. That was the way it was done.
Exactly. That's certainly, I remember self-feed, and then as you say, maize came in, and I mean, I know my time in Oz. The industry is like you were saying. Late 90s when I left, the majority of the industry was in half the year, out half the year, black and white, and as you say, compound in. A few were doing TMR, but not a huge amount. And I've come back, I came back maybe 14 years ago now, and you've got the extreme. She's not anymore, but I used to have someone I know used to milk once a day, spring calving, to the extreme in 300. Well, your system, I suppose, robots 365 days a year. The industry has opened up massively compared to what it used to be. Everybody used to do it pretty much the same way.
Yeah, that'd be fair to say.
Which must make your job a bit more complicated. You probably need more ranges, or not?
I suppose we do. Yes, we do. Certainly for spring calvers, they're looking for high digestible fibre, low protein cakes for the summer,
for the spring grass.
Yes. Use very little feed through the concentrate food through the winter. To people that are all year round calving, on the extreme side, they're just feeding straights. Then there's everything in between, semi TMR with some top up concentrate in the plant.
It's definitely the industry's, the variations changed, hasn't it? Hasn't it? So you give us, so we've talked about, let's talk about cereals to start with. Just to make it clear, I mean, most people think cereals, breads, for wheat, malting for barley, but we should say that the wheat and barley that goes into the livestock industry is usually grown on marginal ground that isn't capable of producing the quality wheat or the quality barley that's required for milling and malting. So therefore there isn't anywhere else really for it to go.
I think there's a risk element to producing those high quality wheats and what have you. Which certainly on malting barley restricts the amount of nitrogen fertilizer they can use. And therefore it puts yield at a massive
potential penalty.
And if they don't hit the right quality, then it becomes feed wheat. So there's a risk. There is a risk element to producing those high quality wheats.
I mean, I've done it on a farm I looked after at one point, and we switched from winter barley to spring barley, and we did it a feed plus contract. And luckily we made it all malting, and that year was a good, so instead of a £5 premium, I think it was a £25 premium. We made as much out of that as we did the wheat that year, but there's no guarantee, is there?
No.
It just doesn't. And the problem is, some people, if they just go on a malting contract, they're penalised then if they don't meet the quality. So I guess what we say is while that is not a recycled part of what's going in your product, it is still a product that doesn't have a market for human consumption.
That's right.
So
it's actually getting rid of waste, because if you're just going to throw it away because it didn't make the quality, then that's a huge advantage.
That's an aspect I'd not thought of, as you say, because I was thinking about just some that's grown purely for feed. As you say, some doesn't make the quality, so therefore it's then switched to the livestock industry to feed.
Excellent backstop.
So that's the cereals. So then, I mean, off the top of my head, and you'll go, we've got soya, we've got rape, we've got palm kernel, soya hulls, sugar beet pulp, wheat feed. Just trying anything else.
Sunflower.
Sunflower. These are all waste products. So distillers, talk us through some of these products, and I guess this is something I want to get out, and what you choose to say is up to you, Mark. But you know, people talk about and penalise our industry for using soya, using palm kernel, and I'm not saying there aren't issues. Don't get me wrong, but these products, by the time we get them, they're a waste product. The oil's been extracted for use for human consumption, and we are using what is left. It's not being grown just for us, and yet we're the ones that seem to be the easy targets, and people they'll pick on us, but we are using, again, a waste product that if it's not used by us, it's buried or burnt. I'll leave that how you want to, but you talk them through some of them.
Well, we're using within the UK compound industry somewhere around 9 million tonnes of recycled co-products.
Right.
And as far as I'm concerned, we are part of that recycling solution, not part of the problem.
We're part of the sustainable. The buzzword is sustainability.
Yes.
At the moment, we are part of that sustainability by using products that would otherwise be buried or burnt.
So I think a lot of them are self-explanatory. You've got wheat feed, which is a byproduct of the flour milling industry. There's nothing really contentious about wheat feed. It's used widely within the feed industry. Things like obviously rape extract. The rape's grown for the oil. Oil's extracted, and we have a rape mill that's commonly used in dairy farms. Soya to the same extent. obviously the issues with soya is a combination of it's mainly grown in America, so there's a carbon footprint element to bring it into from the Americas, and obviously deforestation is a major issue with soya. Sugar beet, once again, a byproduct of the sugar manufacturing. Palm kernel expeller meal is a byproduct of palm production, palm oil production, predominantly used in cosmetics and foods. Literally, palm would be in thousands of products within supermarkets.
Yes, I believe a well-known supermarket said they were going to go palm free, and after a little while, they dropped their own name off the label because they couldn't get rid of it all.
It's something like over 1,400 products.
There's so much you look and it's got palm in.
Yes.
A lot.
Somewhere along the line.
All got soya oil in.
Yes. Yeah.
I guess it's a bugbear of mine. Certain supermarkets tell you you're not allowed to use soya, and yet they go and sell soya milk.
Yes.
Yeah. And who's going to use the waste product? Oh, look at that, the dairy industry. I'm sorry, I'm probably getting on my high horse a bit, but it does frustrate me a little bit. And I'm not saying we can't work without these products, but I feel there should be a more balanced discussion on these sometimes.
Yeah, that's right.
There's another byproduct that is used widely within the compound industry, would be a biscuit meal. These are literally broken biscuits, crisps, chocolate bars, cakes, bread, all
Would
those.
That be in the biscuit meal you use?
Yes.
Oh, it's not just pure biscuit.
No.
Oh, it is other bits and pieces as well.
It's a mixture. Yeah.
I didn't. I always assumed it was purely biscuit. I hadn't realised it got other bits ground in with it as well.
Yeah.
But as you say, that they're typical waste products that would be used moist or other, and obviously now I didn't realise yourselves as well.
Yeah. There's something like 650,000 tons of biscuit meal used within the UK compound industry.
Again, all waste feed.
All waste feed.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah.
Because I have been to a moist blend site, and when you see bunkers of just crisps, and it is, and or I've seen obviously it's a lot more what's the word, mechanized how you're getting, but I've seen farms before where they just buy all the confectionery that's no good, and they used to employ one of the local was it special needs groups or something, just to sit there and open them all up to take them all out the wrappers. I mean, I'm guessing that's not how they do it, but all of these things go in into the industry.
So the issues with biscuit, you've kind of pointed out the two of them. One is from the point of view of traceability and guaranteeing things like non-GM. We've had no control over
what goes in there.
It's got various oils in there and whatever ingredients go in to make up the biscuits.
I mean, I've certainly, when I was in Oz, had what would you call it? It was a sugar-rich mix, for want of a word. I can't think of what it was called now, but it was obviously mixed of sweets and whatever. And I remember the staff going, "Well, can we have them?" I'm like, "Well, you can," but I said, from my own personal point of view, certainly after the first day, because it was out and the potential vermin, always make sure it was a clean face. And that particular mix seemed to have a lot of violet crumbles in. So yeah, whenever I was feeding, I had violet crumbles for breakfast on that particular day.
So there's something like, it's replacing something like 750,000 tons of wheat. And also a lot of oil, because there's a lot of oil in there, so it's replacing a lot of rape being grown as well.
The
other issue with it is admixture, obviously, which you've pointed out. The plastic wrappers, metal foil, paper. Right. So certainly in terms of where that ultimately ends up being spread, it goes through the cow relatively harmlessly. it can be seen. You can see the plastic.
I've seen the odd little bit of blue in a pellet.
Yeah.
Exactly, nothing's perfect.
No, and that ultimately ends up in the environment.
Which I mean, that's not just an our industry problem, is it? There's nowhere in the world you can't go now, and you'll find people with bits of plastic in their blood or whatever it happens to be, because we all do it.
They have the same issue with human sewage sludge spread on land as well.
Yeah.
So the companies that provide the biscuit have got extremely good. They have computerized sorting machines.
Yes.
And so we're looking at a 0.02% admix.
0.02%.
To give you some guidance, that's something like 200 grams or sort of 8 ounces in old money roughly. In 10 tons of feed,
which is really nothing.
But it's there.
Yes, it's there.
Yeah.
It's there.
It's utilising. It's just utilising what we've got.
From an analytical point of view, from a dairy cow point of view, it analyzes as 11% protein.
Yeah.
And between 15.5 and 16 ME.
Because it's something you like, isn't it? Whereas I know there's others who are a bit about biscuit meal, but it works.
It's a high oil because it's had oil mixed in the process, so it's 10.8% oil.
Yeah.
And that's where you've got to be careful. If you overdo the inclusion, we'd limit the usage to around 10%.
I was going to say, I mean, you know this, I know this, but maybe to people not listening, if you do overload your diet in your oil, you can suppress butterfats.
Yes.
So you've got to be aware of what your oil of everything going into the diet is doing.
Yeah.
That's our job, is to do this for people, but that's one of the things we have to watch out for, is make sure our oil inclusion's not too high.
Yeah.
Or it can have negative effects on quality.
Yeah.
But it's energy rich.
Yes. And it's perceived as a cheap product, but it's not. It's priced accordingly to wheat with the energy.
Most things are, though, aren't they? Compared to wheat or soya, where they are is where everything else is priced.
So it's definitely more expensive than wheat would be.
Yeah.
But it's a really good way to get energy into a diet.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let's talk about proteins, if we may. What can you tell us more about soya? Tell us more about rape. I mean, I guess the question is, there's been a push to produce more protein here in the UK, to use rape from the UK. But let's be honest, last 3, 4, 5 years, there's been less rape grown because certain chemicals have been disallowed. It's now creeping back in as people are finding ways around, not the ban, but ways around growing rape without using those chemicals. Where do you see, tell us a little bit of background on the rape and soya, but where do you see UK proteins coming into it?
Historically, rape was high in what they call glucosinolates.
Yep.
And they developed what they call double O varieties in the 80s to take the glucosinolates out.
Yep.
And the agronomy got a lot better. And rape at its peak, UK wide, we were producing about 2 million tons of rape a year, rape extract, that is.
Yeah.
And as far as the UK is concerned, most of that rape is, I don't know the exact figure, but certainly 80% plus is processed in 2 factories, one in Liverpool. And as far as we're concerned, in the south, the other one's based at Erith, which is southeast London.
Yeah, I found that. As a birthday present for my other half, I brought her tickets to go and see ABBA, and we went up in, was it September? And it was like, oh, Erith, oh, I know where it is now, as we drove past. It was quite funny. But yeah, I should say, for anybody listening outside the UK, it's canola is basically what we're talking about, isn't it?
Yes.
Here we call it rapeseed oil, but most of the rest of the world calls it canola. But yeah, so And that's obviously gone back over the last couple of years, like we're saying.
Yeah, so that's halved.
Yeah.
Right, with the what do they call, what was
I
that
forgot what
spray?
the chemical was,
Yeah.
but yeah.
That they
Nematode? Oh, I can't remember, but yeah.
neonics or something.
That's it. Yeah.
So we've been banned from using those on the crops, and
Yeah.
that has meant that successful crops of rape have been decimated. Although people have got round it, and it has become more popular again.
Yeah,
You know.
I mean, I certainly had a client who also had some fair cereal enterprise as well, and I know when it first came in, he ended up resowing his rape crop 3 times.
Yeah.
And even then, not all of it was successful.
Yeah.
But as you say, I've seen people now, what they feed, is it buckwheat, is it, I think, round it? Because apparently that helps take away the flea beetle, and then you've got to wait for the frost to kill it, and then the rape is big enough and gets away.
Yeah.
People are finding not ways, as we said, ways of, they're not using the chemical, they're finding different ways of husbandry, different ways of managing the crops.
Yeah.
And so rape is obviously coming back into it, but obviously it's been let's bring soya into it. They're obviously part of this push has been to use more homegrown product, more homegrown protein, whether it's rape as it is, or whether it's being protected in some way, to use that product. And there's one that's being pushed quite heavily that's produced here in the UK. Yeah. There are others, I should stress, but obviously ultimately the rape's not there to use.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, you can't have it both ways.
Historically, rape has been used. Soya has been used extensively in monogastric and still is.
Yes.
There's not
really
a product to replace soya in broiler and pig diets.
Yeah.
In dairying, obviously, there's been a big trend in the UK over the last few years to use less and less soya.
Yeah.
1 or 2 companies have actually banned it from their diets.
As we're talking milk buyers here now.
Yes. Yeah. From the point of view of
a couple of well-known supermarkets, usually the leaders on that.
Yeah, deforestation is their big issue. In particular that, and its carbon footprint. Yeah, coming from
and you can, let's be honest, as I said earlier, I was getting a bit of my high horse maybe, but we want a more balanced approach. I mean, I've got clients that we have gone soya free, and we're doing other things to supplement what those protein needs are, whether it's using protected rape, whether it's using some prairie meal, depending on what their yields is, or in a couple of instances, we're also using some amino acids. So it can be done. Yeah. But again, as I'm saying, you've still got to have the rape to feed if you can't feed the soya.
A sort of nutritional point of view is that, you know, we've got, you end up using more rape for the same amount of protein.
Yes.
Which is fine. And
that's why soy is liked, isn't it? It's got the high protein density, it's got a high energy density for what it is, and with limited intakes, you got to get your bang for your buck, basically. And if you've got to feed, let's say 1.5 kilos of rape compared to a kilo of soya, just rough figures, it takes up space. It means less forage can be fed and all of these sorts of things, doesn't it?
But we are where we are.
Well, exactly.
Yeah. Also, UK wide now, we've got a certain amount of distillers product available. Historically, that came from the distilling industry in Scotland in particular. A lot of those products didn't really make it down south as such, and now we have bioethanol more widely, obviously in the States in particular.
It's started here again now.
It's started here again. Using wheat rather than maize. So we have wheat distillers available. But the economics of that vary from time to time,
depending on wheat price
and oil price and things like that.
Because that's right, as we're saying, that's how long has that been shut down? 2 years?
2 years, I think.
2 years. Yeah. Because it wasn't deemed viable.
So they're up and running again, and it's nice. It's nice product. The wheat is a bit higher protein than than the maize distillers is.
Yeah, yeah.
The maize distillers would be higher ME.
So it'd be higher energy to it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So and there is a slight advantage if you're using UK wheat from a GM point of view. The maize distillers is
and I suppose a carbon footprint point of view. Let's be honest, because that's what you keep saying it, and it's the carbon footprint all the time.
Yes. So other protein sources, there's sunflower imported.
Yeah.
Right.
But I suspect that's been more restricted the last year, has it?
Yeah, I didn't appreciate it from a European perspective. Ukraine is something like 90% of the European.
I didn't realize. I knew it was good for a lot of stuff, but
Yeah.
when obviously the war happened, obviously at time of recording, it's still going on. And I suspect it will still be going on by the time this goes out.
Yeah.
But when the list suddenly came up, and I knew they were high for some stuff, but Ukraine really is the breadbasket of Europe.
Yeah.
Let's be honest about it. The amount of feed and the minerals and so much comes out of Ukraine.
Yeah. So that's had an effect on the sunflower market, although it all gets priced and pegged to soya anyway.
Yeah.
And non-protein nitrogen is urea. Has got really expensive.
Yeah.
And when you're running diets now, it's actually historically, if you just wanted a level of protein, it would take urea, but it's at the moment it's not.
I mean, just to give people an example, before this all kicked off, what was feed grade urea? 550, 600 pounds a ton.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's certainly the highest price I got quoted last year was, I think, 2,200 pounds a ton.
Yeah.
So obviously come back to that now. Was last day it was about 1,400. You might tell me otherwise. But you know, that's a huge difference.
Yes.
Huge difference.
It is.
I mean, beans seem to be one of those things that come in and out depending, I'm guessing, on cost and availability. And I mean, going on those lines, are those beans useful for anything else?
Yeah,
No.
You know, they are feed.
Yeah, they're purely for feed.
Yeah, I think agronomically they can be difficult to grow, but certainly spring beans in the UK are hit and miss.
Yeah.
You can get a ton a hectare, or as much as 7 or 8 tons a hectare easily.
Blimey, big difference.
Yes,
big difference.
But that's quite hit and miss. Winter beans are a little bit more reliable in terms of yield. Usually
is though, isn't it? Let's be honest. Any winter crop is usually a little bit better yield, etc.
Yes, and with the demise of rape, and with farmers looking at fertilizer costs and things like that, beans are kind of attractive to do and grow. A good entry again back into winter wheat.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think you've probably seen this last year more sort of peas and barley, peas and vetch. Sorry, not peas and vetch, barley and vetch. Those sorts of whole crops are being grown as people are looking to try and grow more. What's the word? Homegrown protein.
Yeah, and low cost.
Yeah,
you know, in terms of fertilizers input.
Yeah.
But they can certainly be used in diets quite happily. Once again, they've bred the tannins out of the varieties.
Yeah.
And you know, we quite successfully use them.
Following on that last comment you made to me the other day, and I said I agreed. Certainly this year that we've just had, so 2022. The grass silages seem to have been lower in protein, don't they?
Yes, as a knock-on effect, a lot of dairy farmers reduced.
Do you think it's just because of
that? Yes.
You do?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Certainly used less fertilizer last spring.
Yeah.
And that has resulted in lower protein.
Which means they've had to buy more protein effectively. So
you
could argue it's backfired, and I'm thinking out loud here, because surely a bag of fertilizer is still cheaper and growing some more protein is still cheaper than having to buy, whether it's rape or soya or whatever it happens to be.
Yes, I haven't done the maths, but
it's a difficult sum to make.
You don't have to dig yourself out of business there, do you, Mark?
I wouldn't like to make that sum.
But no, carry on, Mark. What else is there you can tell us things?
So the other, I suppose, contentious co-product is palm.
Yeah.
Right. So there are two issues. The main thing with palm it is the effect it has on the environment in the countries it's grown in.
Yeah.
Principally sort of in Indonesia, Malaya.
Yeah.
Those are the two main sort of growing areas of palm oil.
Yep.
And it's the deforestation and impact on the
orangutans and whatever else.
In particular. However, as a crop, there's a lot going for it in terms of once these plantations are established, they are sequestering carbon.
Are they? I mean, but again, as we mentioned earlier in this podcast, the problem is we as an industry are getting knocked for it.
Yeah.
But we're
a tiny element of
a tiny element of it, and we're using
the byproduct,
the waste.
Yes.
It's human consumption all the time, so people should be looking at themselves rather than going, oh, cows, easy target, bang. Okay, I'm passionate about cows, that's why we're here. But it's just a more balanced opinion or more informed opinion needs to be out there.
In terms of yield of oil per hectare of product produced, it's 9 times higher yielding than soya per hectare.
Wow.
Yes.
That's massive, isn't it, when you think about it?
Yes. I accept that, the environmental issues
impact,
and some of the footage that came out of Indonesia last year of vast tracts of forest being taken down to provide areas.
Exactly. We're not knocking that at all because we understand it. We don't understand it properly, but we appreciate then it's happening and we are aware that these things are happening. But certainly, my argument is we're the easy target in this, and that annoys me.
There was a period a few years ago, I guess it wouldn't be now, where the likes of Drax were buying palm kernel expeller to burn.
Yes, as in power station.
As in power station. Yes. Yeah. It was at such a price that they could economically buy it.
So it comes down to buried or burnt.
Yes. Yeah.
But I mean, it's like this whole argument though, with sustainability. I read something, was it a month or so ago? What was it? Somebody that eats something like a 4-ounce steak every other day for the year will still have a carbon footprint that's only the quarter of the size of somebody that jumps on a plane and takes one trip to America or something like that. It was something like that. So again, it's, you're knocking an industry that's providing recycling, sustainability, and it's not just all about trees for carbons. I can never say the word sesquate there. Sucking this carbon in. Grassland does it as well, all of these things, and someone's offered us a whole talk to do that, so it'll be a future podcast. But it's planes, it's people, it's
also in the countries that are concerned, Malaysia and Indonesia in particular, that it's big GDP earners for those countries.
Well, it was earlier this year. It was Indonesia banned the export, wasn't it? Because it was making so much money overseas on export, and of course it's the primary, was it cooking oil for their own population? And because it was getting so expensive for people, they banned exports so that there was supply for their local markets.
So as a product. So we have two things here. We have the oil, which is used in cosmetics predominantly. But an extract of that is what they call a PFAD, palm fatty acid distillate. Which is a fractional distillation that they put it through. And that PFAD, which is high in C16 fat in particular, is what comes into the dairy industry.
You don't need it. Feed properly, you don't need it.
So
It should say for anybody listening that isn't in dairy, because I know we have some non-dairy listeners.
Yeah.
Feeding C16 helps butterfats.
Yeah.
That's what it's fed for. It's I'm going to say a sticking plaster. Mark might disagree with me, for improving butterfats.
Yeah.
That's what it's there for, or
Yeah.
that's what it's used predominantly for, isn't it?
Yeah. But we also within the compounding industry add vegetable oil to the diet, and it's a blend of vegetable oils. It's not just PFAD.
Yeah.
Right. It's a blend of other vegetable oils.
So I'm guessing rape and
yes, from a handling point of view.
Yeah.
It's a saturated fat, and is therefore if it's left, it becomes a solid.
It's a solid at room temperature, and it's about 70 degrees. You've got to melt it out, isn't it?
Yeah. So in our factories and many other factories around the country, we have heat tracer tanks.
Yeah.
That's to store the fat.
Yeah.
And then by blending it with lighter oils,
Yeah.
like rape oil or sunflower oil, it's easier to keep.
Yeah, which is why on farm you'll see it in flakes. I mean, one well-known product's Golden Flake, and all similar thing. It's a flake, whereas you're using it as a liquid to spray on
the diet.
On the diet.
So why do we bother using it? It's because it's such high energy, and it goes back to the same argument with the biscuit meal.
Yeah.
Although in this instance, using these oils, which have been purified or selected, that they aren't detrimental to butterfat in the same way that biscuit meals can be.
Yeah. Well, again, it's that balance of. I mean, I've had a former colleague who now is doing very well in the pet industry. Good on him. And he had a diet, and he rang me up, new client tech, and said, "Oh, I'm adding C16, butterfats are dropping. Well, I said, well, it's got to be your oils. And we looked at the products he was using, and I said, take your C16 out, and his butterfats came out just because he had too much oil in the diet.
I see. Yeah.
So one of those, funny enough, was a very well-known protected rape that is a good product. Don't get me wrong, but it is also high in oil, and that can have the effect. And people need to be aware of these things.
Yeah. So I've lost my train of thought.
That's all right. Keep you on your toes.
Yeah.
So you talked about the distillate, but what about the PPE?
Sorry, the oil from a we are or can buy oil that is part of the round table of sustainable palm oil.
Yeah.
RSPO oil.
Yeah.
So we have got a number of milk buyers that will allow us to use that product
sustainably sourced,
so providing we buy it with that certificate.
Okay. What makes it sustainable compared to what's not sustainable? I'm assuming it's still grown in Indonesia or Malaya or wherever it happens to be. What suddenly makes that sustainable compared to a non-sustainable?
It's gone through a certification process to be authenticated as being from a sustainable source, so not deforestation.
Well, it was. Sorry, I'm being controversial here, but it was 20 years ago. But now it's been a palm site for the last few years. It's all good.
Yeah, you may well say that. Yeah. But so we can certainly get that on the oil and the oil blend that we use in the feeds. Right.
I certainly know. Taking a step back, you can with soya as well, can't you? You can get a sustainable soy certificate. Is that right?
Yes, we do.
And to be honest, most people want some form of sustainability if you are using soy. I don't know. A lot of the milk buyers once a year want an update of where you've got your soya from, and it's not come out of. Can't remember which one. It's one of the South American countries is particularly known for being a deforestation to grow soya, isn't it?
Yeah, Brazil in particular. I'll name it.
I honestly couldn't remember which one of the two it was, so I didn't want to name the wrong one. So thank you. But so Brazil, people want to make sure it doesn't come out of Brazil, basically, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you can still get sustainable soy out of Brazil.
Yeah.
From non-deforested areas, that type of thing. Yeah, and then there is a big move, obviously, to clean up that whole act of deforestation.
Well, pretty much has been my whole life. I remember,
Yes.
it's been, they've been on about it and on about it. So, but yeah.
So, so going back to the palm.
Yeah.
So then you have the palm kernel expeller mill. So literally where they've crushed the palm kernel, the nut
Yeah.
of the palm.
Yeah.
They've extracted the oil from it, and then you're left with a meal. Right now, it's the palm kernel has been a compounder's friend for forever.
A lot of spring carvers like it as well.
Yes.
Let's be honest.
Yes,
because it's quite good energy, it's quite good protein.
Yeah,
they limit how much they usually feed on it, so it's easy to put it out there and feed without being too complicated.
Yes. It can vary a little bit in its consistency.
Yeah.
But generally it's a sort of a mid-energy, mid-protein. Right, it's extremely dusty to be used on farm.
Yeah,
but most compounders would use it in probably 10 to 12%.
So I was just about to say it's usually around that sort of 12%. I see it in diets.
I do know that one or two won't use it for the sort of political reasons that we've discussed.
Exactly. The one of your competitors, and I won't name them, has launched a range of cakes that's got no palm and no soya in. Purely on the back of that, I'm guessing that's again being driven by the milk buyer because they don't want this. So these things can be done.
Yes, we have a similar.
Of course you do. Yes.
We have a similar range of cow foods and dairy products.
So exactly, all these things that can be done, and as we've discussed earlier, we can successfully have diets on farm that are soya free. But to me, it's just let's have a more balanced approach to it.
There's to take soya out of a diet is normally saving you money, right? But it's things like soya hulls, which is obviously another byproduct of the soya industry. That has more of a cost implication, right?
But you say that, I mean, it's cost, but also you could argue, what's it costing you by not having it in there? Let's take soya. First thing you lose out of by taking soya when you look at amino acids is lysine.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know like there's work that project, I forgot his name is Chris, something up at Reading did for 5 years when they looked at low, different levels of protein diets.
Chris Reynolds.
That's it. Thank you. I saw him on a webinar and he said we can get cows to milk at 14% crude protein. I should say these days most run at 16 to 18.
Yeah.
Traditionally or historically then they've run higher. But he said we can get them to milk at 14, but they don't have the longevity to them because they're missing some of those essential amino acids. So either you've got to feed them, i.e. your lysine, or you've got to supplement them, as I'm doing on a couple of clients, with the amino acids. But again, there's only the two currently available as rumour protected amino acids, unlike the monogastrics, who a lot of theirs is purely done on balance of amino acids, isn't it?
Oh, very much so. Yes.
Because they're like us, only got one stomach and it's not a problem, whereas a cow is, a unique.
Yes.
Well, got sheep as well, but ruminants are a little bit different.
Yeah. So with palm kernel is an important product for compounding and extremely cost effective for the farmer.
Exactly, for what it does when you look at it, it does definitely.
Yeah. We've talked about soya and soya hulls.
Yeah. I mean, saying that, I mean, you're talking about soy hulls. I mean, sugar beet's less available than what it used to be because again, that's going in biodigesters, isn't it? Sort of on the east where the sugar beet factories are. That's sort of, so you were getting less of that coming across to us, aren't we?
Well, talking about sugar beet as far as the UK is concerned, It's predominantly grown sugar beet under contract to British Sugar, right? And you kind of have a monopoly of selling the resultant sugar beet feed that's produced from that. And unfortunately, in the UK, all the imported sugar beet is priced against that. So as we've had this year, a very poor harvest of sugar beet,
push the price up,
right?
Yeah.
So consequently, even the imported beet is relatively expensive. However, if you're in a soya-free diet, and you need digestible fibre, historically, it's been sugar beet that people turn to, and farmers like sugar beet. We all like sugar beet. But if you're in the position you can't use soya hulls and you're looking for a digestible fibre source, you more or less have to use sugar beet. There's
the thing is though, what's I mean, obviously because of the pressure on sugar beet, it's put soya hulls up. And I know I was having a conversation with someone a month or two ago, and he's like, I can't get any digestible fibre. He said, I've tried this, I can't use soya hulls because of the milk contract I'm on. He said, I can't get this, I can't get this, I can't get this, I've tried this or whatever, and it was coming back to him. And in the end, I sort of said, well, I have actually managed to find you a bit of sugar beet if you want. And I just let him talk to the people direct. I didn't sort of get involved. But so whether he did it, I don't know. But it gets a bit awkward sometimes as to what you can and can't do to make things happen.
Yeah. At the moment, the best thing you can probably buy from a cost of energy point of view is barley. But you run into issues with
barley's been quite suppressed in price recently.
But you run into issues with too much starch in the diet.
No,
and some of the forages we're seeing this season, grass silages, are extremely good, have fermented extremely well, and are very high lactic acid.
Which can cause problems.
No,
I've again this year like last year, I've had someone come in, what's my problem? And it's high lactic acid, which is great, as I try to explain to people. I know another podcast on it, but it shows you've had a good fermentation. Shows you've got good silage. Unfortunately, the cow can't cope with high levels of lactic acid. So what else is there, or what's new? Because I think you said you found some new bits and pieces.
Certainly one of our palm kernel suppliers in particular, they are trying to clean up their act in terms of the political downside of using palm. And so they, by the end of 2025, all their palm kernel expeller will be from sustainable sources. So the industry is moving towards that, definitely.
There's been pressure. And look, I'm not saying as an industry we shouldn't be. We should all be always trying to do our best to move forward and do better. But let's take a balanced approach.
Okay.
Excellent.
So quickly looking at time, you've talked us through most of your products, where they are, where they come from. How do you end up putting things together?
So we have a formulation program that so we start off with the specification of the diet. Right,
wherever your energy level is, protein level,
energy, protein, mineral constraints as well. We can build in all sorts of constraints. We can build in Andrew Jones constraints if you like.
That'll be expensive.
And we're looking at carbon footprint as well. And you'll see one or two companies now are producing carbon footprint levels.
Are you doing that yet?
We can.
Because when I've spoken to you historically, I can't remember, a year or two ago, you said, well, we can do it. There's a couple of different options, but we don't want to choose the wrong route when another one's gone. And you need a sort of a little bit of a indication of which way people were going.
Most of the UK companies now, or the buyers, are pushing us towards a database. It's called the GLFI.
Yes, when I did my recent FAR latest module, they were on about that there. Yes.
What GFLI global?
I can't remember.
Yes, sorry.
But no, don't worry. All I remember is I did it before they reviewed it. After a lot of people playing.
So basically, it's an index that's been developed worldwide.
Yes.
And has input from all the EU countries. Certainly, and obviously UK data was in that originally. American and Canadian data is certainly in there. And basically, what they're doing, they're doing a carbon footprint assessment for each commodity. From field to finished product. Right. So you end up with a well,
I guess from field to you, and then farmer's got to add whatever the distance is from you to him. It's probably going to have
yes, and we've done that, and including transport.
Oh, can you?
From us to the farm.
So if they're a couple of miles apart, you can actually differentiate on the ticket what the carbon footprint is. Just slightly different.
Would be conceivable
to do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
At the moment we use an average.
Yeah.
Delivery distance.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The interesting one is we count the transport from the mill to the farm.
Yeah.
Should we be counting the transport from the farm back to the mill?
You could argue yes, but you could argue no, isn't it?
As far as the farm is concerned, it stopped on his delivery, but
you've still got to do a round trip to.
Yes.
Yeah. It's still impacting your business, and you've got to show where it's going on your business, but down the chain, surely.
But currently, the ship bringing the soya
from wherever
to Bristol or Southampton
or wherever.
Yes, they aren't accounting for the carbon footprint on its return journey.
Okay.
Right. So a little bit of
yeah. That's a difficult one.
These databases are in their infancy. I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes. Things will be happening. I think they will develop over the next few years, and that's really why we don't feel we're ready to put them on the labels yet.
Numbers on them, yeah.
But if people want to know the number, I can.
So let's say I have a client that for whoever their buyer is wants to know what a carbon footprint. You could provide that today if they wanted it.
Yes.
It's just not. I put general information as it's available information, but it's just not readily I'm trying to put it right. It's not out there information, but it is available information if people want it.
Yes, and I'm sure over the next 2 or 3 years we will be putting that
on the label.
On the label.
Yeah.
There are 1 or 2 other methane reducing sort of products out there. Right. There's one in particular that's probably going to be launched next year in the UK.
That's not the seaweed based.
No.
This
is I don't really want to know.
That's fine.
Company for this broadcast, but it is a very well proven technology, reduces methane substantially. However, they don't get a yield increase or anything like that, which some of the seaweed and other
products.
A lot of other products are also using garlic type.
I know there's somebody locally trialing something or other, isn't there? I remember. A couple of farms I've heard are doing something.
Yes. And that's going to be what the sticking point. I think that they undoubtedly have got the evidence to say that they reduce methane. But at a cost which has got to be recouped somewhere.
It's not like you're adding it and it's going to give me an extra litre, so that will cover the cost. It's going to reduce it, but no other benefit. The benefit is surely reducing. The benefit is reducing the methane, but it's not increasing your production to cover the cost of it.
Yeah, exactly.
But so just we were saying, you have this information. So how do you put the ration together?
So we have the formulation, and then it becomes a constraint of energy, and normally the other one is whether it's going to be high starch or high NDF or HDF diet, right? And then you have your physical constraints. From a mill manufacturing point of view, they don't want it all to be wheat feed or whatever.
Say, so just for people that are listening, that HS high starch, HDF is high density fiber, isn't it? So digestible fiber. Digestible fiber. Sorry. And then so it's a high fiber diet, which is traditionally fed more at spring when you're looking for the fiber, because the spring grass is lacking fiber.
Yes. Yeah. So. And those diets are more expensive, because they've relied historically a lot on sugar beet, and
well, some people still like to see a sugar beet top, don't they?
Yes,
particularly jerseys.
Yeah, soy hulls has obviously filled that space as well.
Yeah,
but obviously there's a bit of against that because of the cost.
Yeah.
Right. Historically, we have used in this country quite a lot of citrus pulp, dried citrus pulp, but that has gone out of fashion as much as anything.
Well, I'm told there's no citrus available in the market in the UK.
Okay.
Certainly not moist.
Yeah.
Apparently it's all going back to Holland.
Right.
It's all, whereas we were getting it effectively as a waste product and paying for it as a waste product, or the moist feed people were.
Yeah.
Apparently, someone in Holland has found a way to extract peptides from it, and are buying the whole lot and shipping it back to Holland because they can make more money out of it.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
yeah,
things change.
Yeah. So, probably 5 or 6 years ago, we were getting a lot of citrus pulp shipped here. But it's gone up.
Why do you think it's gone out? I love it.
Well,
probably the smell as much as anything else. Let's be honest.
It's quite acidic.
Yeah.
And that's what put a lot of people off it. Although it's high in digestible fibre, it's quite acidic, and that's what it fell out of fashion because of that. But cows found it after it was a bit of an acquired taste.
Yeah.
Once they did have a taste for it, they eat it quite readily.
Yeah, as I say, the smell of it would make it palatable, make it desirable.
Yeah.
Well, it did for me anyway.
Yeah.
Oh dear. I mean, Neil, most of the time I know you've been listening to this because this isn't your main area, I suppose. But have you got any other questions for Mark that I wouldn't maybe think of because I'm too close to it? Maybe, I don't know, but you tell me.
No, I think that it's been absolutely brilliant. It's lovely to listen to how far our industry is going ahead on sustainability and different ideas, and then it's really quite heartwarming to listen to. We've also used citric acid in South Africa quite often, and exactly what Mark said. This citric acid was a bit too high, and it was too acid, and we often lost in fertility, for instance, in the cattle. So that was one of the problems that we occurred. And then, of course, it eats cement. So it used to make furrows through your cement because obviously it's very acid. Yeah, but otherwise, Mark's been absolutely fascinating. I've thoroughly enjoyed sitting here and listening. So thank you. I was just one I was thinking about, you were talking about biscuits. What do they do with the excess bread? Is bread also coming back in, or because we used to use that as well? And
they do use it to a certain degree in these biscuit mills, but bread is actually quite moist, so it's tended to go into the moist mixes that you can buy. Right. Can be mixed. Historically, it was mixed with citrus pulp. Bread.
This is what I know it all.
Brewers' grains. Those sorts of things.
Yeah. You probably see bread now. I mean, I can tell you an absolute horror story about a bread delivery, but we won't today. But when I was out in Victoria, but that's no worries. No, that's good. So really, Mark, I'd like to say thank you for your time and coming to speak to us. It's been great to try and demonstrate how, as an industry, we are effectively a recycling industry. it helps the sustainability for everybody that we are reusing products that otherwise wouldn't be reused.
Yeah.
So I'd like to say thank you to that. I'd like to say thank you to everyone that's continuing to listen to us. And as we always say, if you've got any further questions you'd like us to point to Mark or any other of our guests over time, please do email us. The email is podcast@ChewintheCud.com. Follow us on Twitter @ChewintheCudPod. We are also on other social media as well. So yeah, I guess really on that note, thank you very much, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you, Neil.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Thanks, Mark. That was
goodbye.
lovely.
And we'll speak. Hopefully, you'll hear us all again soon.
Yeah, everybody enjoy listening. Thank you.
And now for the really boring bit, I'm afraid, the legal disclaimer. The information provided during this podcast has been prepared for general information purposes only and does not constitute advice. The information must not be relied upon for any purpose, and no representation or warranty is given to its accuracy, completeness or otherwise. Any reference to other organisations, businesses or products during this podcast are not endorsements or recommendations of Chewing the Cud Limited. The views of Andrew Jones are personal and may not be the views of Chewing the Cud Limited, and the views of Neil Greggor are personal and may not be the views of Master Gen Limited and any affiliated companies. Thank you for listening and goodbye.